Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Strangini. We are studying the book of Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 17. And I don't have the right verse up there, of course. Let's just pick up with these verses. And when they were come to the multitude, there came to him a certain man kneeling down to him and saying, Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is a lunatic and sore vexed. For ofttimes he falleth into the fire, and oft into the water. And I brought him to thy disciples, and they could not cure him. Then Jesus answered and said, O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? Bring him hither to me. And Jesus rebuked the devil, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, Why could not we cast him out? Oh, hold on, let's just, we'll deal with that after we deal with the first part. So first part, a man comes describing his son as a lunatic. Now, people often, the lunatic, the idea in the old times, they didn't understand diseases. And so, like if someone had epilepsy, they thought maybe it was caused by the moon or something like that. I mean, you can imagine someone seeing somebody fall down and go into convulsions, and they're on their back, and their eyes are locked, and then they say, "Look, it's the moon," These sort of diagnoses are not made by modern medicine. So it's sort of like picking on those facts, as many often do, as far as like being like, well, that's not scientifically accurate. It's like, well, if Jesus knew better, why didn't he tell people? If he knew better, how could he tell people in their language? In their language, that is lunacy. Moonstruck. That's what they call it. And besides, Jesus doesn't even say lunatic. He doesn't say anything in particular, except just he criticizes their faith. They could not cure him. The disciples had been given authority to cast out devils, and they could not cure this young man. And Jesus' response is pretty harsh. A faithless and perverse generation. How long shall I be with you? And remember, generation has always in the New Testament not a statement of like. Well, it means offspring, and I wanted to just double check that real quick. Matthew, and we got. Thank God for high-speed internet. Oh, great. Well, this is some weird parallel version. And now the part with... Oh, gee. Oh, there was Strong's King James Version. Thank you. Verse 15 or 16, whatever. Yeah. Race, family, generation. It means like offspring. Faithless and perverse. How long shall I be with you? How long shall I suffer you? It's kind of a harsh thing to wonder. How long am I going to have to endure this? Bring him hither to me. And Jesus rebuked the devil, and he departed out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. And again, if you don't have any, there's no general theory of, what do they call it? What do they call that? The theory, germ theory, the theory of disease. But interestingly, they attribute what a devil is like, this demon, this spirit, there's something or other that gets into people. They knew that there was some sort of alien intrusion into the person's body. I mean, if it's but not all. Obviously, some diseases are congenital, but they're all based on some sort of corruption in the human form that God can fix. I forget what causes epilepsy. It's not a. Though I suppose seizures can be symptomatic of other things. Like, it's not at all clear that this is, like I said, there's no diagnosis of epilepsy here. It's the presumption of epilepsy by modern people looking back. It's like, well, he falls into the fire and into the water. I can't go anywhere with him without it. He goes into seizures or something like seizures, and he's falling down. You can imagine when someone is having a seizure that it very much appears like something devilish going on. And in a sense, it is devilish. It's part of the corruption and evil in the world. Okay, then came, when the child was cured, then came the disciples to Jesus apart and said, "Why could we not cast him out?" And Jesus said unto them, sorry about the motion on my monitor, and then the camera's on top, and it's like too big for this desk. And Jesus said to them, "Because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if you have faith as a grain of a mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible to you. Howbeit, this kind goeth out not out, but by prayer and fasting." And so then he goes on to another subject. So two things here. We could not cast him out. He attributes it to their unbelief. And it's an interesting thing he says here that is often, there's a lot that can be said about it. Faith as a grain of mustard seed. And I always say, that's something a lot of Christians struggle. It's like it only takes a tiny bit of faith to move whole mountains. And there, the way I've taken to looking at this now is faith is dangerous. It's powerful. And faith, as like I said, when I received the Holy Spirit, I was believing and unbelieving. I had unbelief. Paul, what was that? Oh. Oh yeah, there's a truck outside. I think it's the tree trimmers. Well, whatever. Yeah, the air brake's going off. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. Truck pulled up in front of my house. I was sort of distracted by that. You hear the air brakes going off and you wonder, well, what's going on? Well, they might start tree trimming in the middle of Bible study. That's kind of funny. So, faith is dangerous. All right? Faith is, and I said, when I received the Holy Spirit, there was faith, belief, and unbelief. And God had mercy on my unbelief. There are times when it says, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And in humanity, there is always a mixture. But faith is actual conviction, actual belief. Meaning, there isn't, in actual faith, and the thing that believes, there is no, a person may have doubt, but belief has no doubt. I mean, if I were to coalesce or boil faith down to its pure essence and at its core, it is absolute conviction. On some level you believe or you don't. Human beings are capable of maintaining what they call cognitive dissonance, of having two contradictory ideas existing in their mind at the same time. We are able... Great, there they go. We are able to do that. They're going to start chainsawing, right? Great, let's see how... Oh, whatever. It's more distraction to me, I hope. They had to start. They had to pick my house to start first thing in the morning, didn't they? So, I'm sorry, something bring him hither to me. So he rebuked the devil, blah, 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 blah. This is just going great. Major distraction. It's like I want them to get their thing in a position, just start the chainsawing. All right. Anyways, I don't know if you hear it, but there's like this weird ring. It's just going off, and it's loud in my ears, that's for sure. Faith is absolute. If we have faith, that part of our faith that is true is something boiled down to absolute conviction. There's no doubt in it. And when people believe things absolutely, true or not, I mean, think about it, all that can be done, all that men do through their convictions. By being convicted of something, it is mountain moving, it is nation building, it is nation destroying. Think about, like, in a negative way, I'll give you negative examples just so you can see, like, how belief in the communist ideal, all the havoc it wrecked in, basically in Asia for the most part. Soviet Union, China, all the havoc, all the destruction and misery, because people were so convicted that they were willing to stack up the bodies to the hundreds of millions. So, the thing is, I've never been able to lay my hands on anybody to heal them, having the absolute conviction that what I was doing would be effectual. I don't know how to make myself have that absolute conviction. You know what I mean? Like you have to really believe that when you do it, it's really going to happen. And I've tried to believe it. But I'm certain that on some level, I'm just not convicted. I don't believe. Is it God? I kind of don't believe in myself, like in the sense that why would God do this at my request? And that's a good question, because it's like, is it my request? When Jesus says, if anything you ask in my name, I will give it you. And if you shall ask anything in my name, I will give it you. That's from Gospel of John. If it's 14, 15, or 16, it's in there. I don't want to sweat the one verse, but people know these verses. Like you've heard it said. And so you think like, well, I just ask and it'll happen. Like in his name isn't like really a really important sticking point. It's because God has to want it to happen. And you have to believe that God wants it to happen right then and there, exactly as you're asking. I'd like to do something like that. Alright. We have the tree trimming, a splendid truck. They were here yesterday. They had to come back. It's just really annoying. Sorry about that. And as far as this kind goeth out but by prayer and fasting, well, what I can say about that is this, is that what is the purpose of prayer and fasting? What does that do? Well, in a sense, it's at least for me, as I've used it, I used it at a time when I really wanted to, when I was really serious about something that I maybe had been taking lightly. You know, like maybe I've got some problem, some sin, right? And for the most part, it's kind of low level and it's not bothering anybody in particular, right? But then it'll get bad. So like there's a moment where like the consequences are bad. Like I hurt someone I love, you know, I mean, because of my lack of self-control or something like that, you know. Well then, you know, and my remorse, I've taken up fasts to try to basically as a declaration of like, I want this more than I want to eat. You know, fasting is a kind of a sacrifice, is it not? You know, it's like you're forgoing eating now food in the hope of having something in the future that you want from God. And prayer also is, you know, you stop whatever it is you're pursuing and you talk to God. That's not exactly a sacrifice, but fasting is on some level sacrificial. You know, it's part of, you know, making a living sacrifice out of your own life. So he's suggesting also that they lack faith, and like he said, he called them faithless and perverse. On some level, sometimes we don't have the faith to do what is necessary, what needs to be done. It's like when Peter walked on the water. You think, oh, well, once you start walking on the water, why would you subsequently doubt? You know, once you've taken a step and the surface didn't break, you know, you stepped onto the water and you didn't sink. You're walking on the surface of the water. And what would, you know, and then you look around at the sea and the waves roaring. It's not exactly what, but you look at the sea being tossed. It's not like a nice day. It's not like he's walking on a placid afternoon. It's like the sea is kind of moving and stuff. And even so, you think, well, even more so, he was really walking on the water. Sometimes, because of our unbelief, we need something extra. And Jesus says, this kind goeth not out but by prayer and fasting. He suggests there's something about, maybe perhaps because there's something different here. This is not just a question of, you know, if it's epilepsy or something. This is not just like something that you get cured just because you ask. I don't know. That's always a little bit, you know, I guess what he's saying ultimately is like, it requires a little more of us. The greater gifts of God, the greater things we would ask of him require more of us. It is not just, you know, because I mean, it's one thing you're talking about, He'll say, oh, well, salvation is a free gift. All you've got to have is faith. Well, all you had to have is faith to cast out devils, and apparently that didn't work. It required something more. That's why, I often say that the only time in the Bible it says faith alone or faith only, you look up those phrases, they only occur in James, and that is, they only occur there to be denied. Because faith without works is dead. Because it's not likely to be legitimate. Because I can just say I have faith, I can make a claim to faith, but if I don't have the works to back it up, it's unlikely that I'm even telling the truth, neither to you nor even myself. The first person you lie to is you. It's the most effectual way to lie. First you lie to yourself, convince yourself of the lie, then you can speak it, and it comes forth with conviction. Men lie to themselves all the time in order to be able to speak falsely without being detected. If you deceive yourself first, you're a more effective deceiver. Not that I want to train a bunch of deceivers. Okay, so let's move on. Well, 22 minutes in. Okay, great. And while they abode in Galilee, Jesus said unto them, the Son of Man shall be betrayed into the hands of men, and they shall kill him, and the third day he shall be raised again. And they were exceeding sorry. Now, the first time he mentions this, or the first time, it says from that time on he started talking about this, and Peter rebuked him at first. Now they're sort of, it's sort of getting him down. It's like, this isn't what you're supposed to say. This is, they're following him. He's feeding people. He's making miracles. And then he says this, and they're unhappy. And when they were come to Capernaum, they that received tribute money came to Peter and said, doth not your master pay tribute? He saith, yes, because that's what you say. You don't say, nope, you don't say that. You say yes. And when he was coming to the house, Jesus prevented him. That means anticipated. That is an Old English usage. Not Old English, but I mean King James English. Old English would be if we started talking Old English, we would neither understand what we say nor what was said to us. Jesus prevented him, saying, what thinkest thou, Simon? Of whom do the kings of the earth take custom or tribute? Of their own children or of strangers? Peter saith unto him, of strangers. Jesus saith unto him, then are the children free. Notwithstanding, lest we should offend them, go thou up to the sea, cast a hook, and take up the fish that cometh first up. And when he has opened his mouth, thou hast opened his mouth, thou shalt find a piece of money. That take and give to them for me and thee. Okay, that's the end of the chapter. And what is he saying here? Just a simple sort of, he anticipates Peter coming to ask about the tribute. Now, tribute is different. It is a tax laid on strangers. And that, custom or tribute, they would lay it on people like they had dominion over, like they would conquer people, and those people would be expected to pay tribute. And that's how things were done. To keep people at home happy by taking taxes away from the nations which you have become dominant over. And that's the way things were done. Do they ask of their own children or of strangers? And Peter said, of strangers. Jesus saith unto him, then are the children free. See, he's saying, it's sort of like, all the people of Jesus' generation had been born under Rome. And he sees it's sort of like birth. He thinks, being born here under you, we are kind of your children, are we not? But obviously that's not how the Romans saw it. You know, they didn't see it as one nation coming together and coalescing, but they were an empire. And Jesus understands this. He understands that they are not going to be sympathetic to an argument that's like, well, you know, we're practically Roman citizens. They were, for all practical purposes, citizens, yet by no means citizens. It was something you had to be granted on a technical level. And he tells them, you know, go cast the line in the sea and take up a fish, and inside that fish's mouth there's going to be a piece of money. That's an interesting thing. That makes me think of like Jonah, you know. Except here used for something very mundane. Cast a hook. The first thing that comes up. Open his mouth, you'll find a piece of money that take. I'm like wanting to read something symbolic into that, but I'm at a loss. Except, you know, like, you know, the things that go down into the depths of the sea. That is where the treasure is, you know, in the unknown. To find treasure, you have to go into the unknown. You have to go into, you know, under the water, so to speak. And I do mean that in a sense of like, if you want treasures of knowledge, you have to go into places where you're not familiar, you know. If we constantly just explore the familiar, we won't gain profit. We have to explore the unfamiliar. We have to reach out into new places of exploration to find deep things under the waters. All right, so sorry about this study being so interrupted, but they are just sitting right outside my window with a big truck, and they seem to have settled down out there. I'm not even sure what they're doing. So anyways, if the stream gets interrupted, it'll be because they hit my power line or something, I guess. At this time, I'll remind you to subscribe to Line by Line Bible Studies and click the like button. For more study songs and more, visit oraclesofgod.org, and they're all in the description below. If you have a question, you can, of course, type it into the live stream chat on the right of the thing there. I don't know what it looks like on a mobile device, but the live stream chat. If you know, some people don't want to type it into there, and you can always email me at this address. Send your questions in, and I will. I try to check that on a nearly daily basis. You can send questions or comments. You know, if it's something you want me to comment on, if you want me to react to it, you'd have to be specific. Yeah, okay, good. Sorry, I was just checking my email, see if there's anything new besides what I'd already seen. Okay, let's move into chapter 18. 18 verse 1. At the same time, I can't read it, came the disciples unto Jesus, saying, Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And Jesus called a little child unto him, and set him in the midst of them, and said, Verily I say unto you, except ye be converted and become as little children, ye shall not enter into the kingdom of heaven. Whosoever therefore shall humble himself as this little child, the same is greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoso shall receive one such little child in my name receiveth me. But whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck, and that he was drowned in the depth of the sea. We'll hold there, because he's going to make more exposition on it. So they have the question, I mean, everyone wants to be great in the kingdom, like whosoever shall do and teach them, the same shall be called great in the kingdom. But they want to know who is going to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And he brings forth a child, a little child. And what is that? Let me just check on that one. So they call that tribute the temple tax. Tribute. Didakamon. A double drachma, or whatever. I don't know. I never claimed to be an expert. I've just been... It's not an expert, it's insight. A little child, that's one word. Paidion. It's a small, very small. Now, everyone has encountered children that are not humble, okay? I certainly have. But, the children do have, but laying that aside, like the bad kid that's been gone wild, if you get them small enough, there is an undeniable humility that comes, because they know they really don't know anything. They're intensely curious about the world. They regard the world with a sense of wonder and delight, which adults just can't match. And that is the way we need to be to approach God, is we have to approach him with a sense of ignorance, wonder, and delight. I mean, those are the humble characteristics. Yeah, I mean, because what is the opposite of that? It's the old man who thinks he knows everything. That is, I mean, because how is a child humble versus, because children are selfish and self-centered and stuff. But in which way are they as, what is the humility of a child versus the pride of the adult? The adult is proud because he understands his competence. He understands certain things about the world. He thinks he knows things. And it's very difficult. I try to be that way, like constantly, because the thing is, that's one of the problems with churches and denominations and stuff, is they totally ruin that. As far as, you can't be a little child if you know everything. And that's what organized churches do. They know everything. As far as, like, everything you need to know, they know. And it's all set in stone and unshifting. But then, again, you have to have solid doctrine, right? You can't just have willy-nilly doctrine. And so you have to walk the balance between that, between the old and the new. There's always new wine. And so we have to be always like new wineskins. Yeah, we don't want to be like reeds shaken in the wind, blown about with every wind of doctrine. There's a possibility of both. You know what I mean? Both, we can become too calcified, too made, like stone. And now they're going to start chainsawing. Something that took them so long to get started. That's not as loud, though. It's not bothering me. So that you can become so calcified, you become hardened and like a old bottle, and you can't change. Because here's the thing, there's so much to be known of God. There's so much for for us to learn that we can't afford to think we know it all at any point. We can't, let's say a man is an electrician. I'm going to work on my power lines, the cutting trees. You may know everything there is to know about electricians, about being an electrician. You know, that's possible. You become a full electrical engineer, and all that there is to be known can be in the palm of your hand. And that's because that is a field of study that can be encompassed with some, degree of completeness. But when it comes to the things of God, there is, his ways are past finding out. Oh, the depths of the wisdom and then of the knowledge of the Lord. How are his ways past finding out? You cannot fully plumb the depths. You cast in the hook and you pull out a fish with a coin in it, and it's like a miracle. But there's always more. You haven't emptied the sea. And so you can spend your entire life exploring the ocean on the surface and think and maybe think, I know a bit about this ocean, yet having never put your head under the surface or plumbed its actual depths. That's what the knowledge of the Lord is likened to things like the waters of the sea. It's like a and why, the kingdom of heaven is like a householder who brought out of his treasure both things old and new. There are things that need to be set in stone that we don't change. That don't change. We gotta be careful how we build that, though. I mean, because so many times people believe, when I go to churches, I see things have become calcified that shouldn't be calcified. Like, this should not be why is this a rock? Why have we chosen this as the hill to die on, so to speak? Like we've chosen that we're going to fight over this little piece of work, and I can't figure out why. Now, this is the thing we're going to keep preaching till it offends people. This is the thing we're going to harp on until our church is empty. And that's what he gets to here, is about the offenses. Right? We got to humble ourselves. That's how you become and Jesus himself is the ultimate example. He humbled himself and became in fashion as a man. For him, that was the biggest step down one could imagine. You're coming down from God to becoming a man. And that is the idea of humility. Too often men begin to regard themselves like they are gods. Infallible, all-powerful, all-knowing. That if only they were, or maybe not all-powerful, but like they think of themselves as like, I know how to fix everything. We know how to fix it. We can solve all the problems. Just give us the power and we can do it. It's the most dangerous sort of thinking. There's no humility at all. And like, I have something to learn. Or they ought to think I have something to learn. Especially, like if they have not exhibited competence. And you think about all the young people who run around wanting to change the world. And they can't even, change the oil in their car. They can't even, and not that you have to be able to do that, but it's such a simple thing. They can't keep their living space organized. And, I say that with a little bit of a smile because my living space is not perfectly organized. It's organized to some degree, but there's so much living going on around me that that it very quickly gets out of order. Maintaining it is difficult. If a man is not able to rule his own house well, why should he be put in charge of something greater? God has given us all our own life to order, to put into into order, let's just say, put into its proper alignment. You know, and we can't align our own life, and then we're going to go out and tell other people how to align their lives. There's a lot of unnecessary pride in that. You know, children, I mean, you know, little children don't try to tell us what to do. You know, and here I am sitting teaching, telling people. There must needs be teachers, you know. Like I said, I'm not, whatever. I hate talking about that. It's like, I'm not inflexible. I can change. Yeah, I've done it. Who likes it? Not me. Who likes having their stuff they've said overturned and like, nah, you're wrong, you're foolish, you're stupid. That's how you feel. We gotta understand that children are not very wise. They're not very full of knowledge. It's like, and we ought to regard ourselves in the same way. And come to him as children, humble. And whoso shall receive one of such little child in my name receiveth me. The Lord is, you know, gracious. We ought to be receptive. What does it mean by receptive, though? You know, what does that mean? I think, you know, to take into care, to help in the faith, to help build up in the knowledge. You know, that's how you enter into the kingdom, through humility. And we want to maintain humility, right? And receive the humble and the lowly and the meek. And not become like, you know, like, how do you offend, you know, by being a religious jerk, you know, by being, you know, people are believing in Christ, they're humble, well, you know, but we can come down hard and, you know, and be offensive, cause people to stumble, cause people to take offense, or, you know, we can actually drive people away from Christ, away from the truth. And that's not a good thing. Jesus said it'd be better to have a millstone hanged around your neck and be drowned in the sea than that you should, you know, when he says offend, it doesn't mean like, oh, I have a feeling of offense. That's not what it means. I mean, and it can be that. I mean, that can proceed. It's not just a question of like, what you said is so shocking. Jesus said shocking things all the time. I mean, like, I'm going to be crucified. How about that? And then Peter's like, no, no. You know, it's like he was offended. But not in the sense that it's meant here. It's like when he says in the parable of the sower, right? When he said about the son, you know, when their tribulation or persecution ariseth, and they are offended. They follow. That means basically they fall away. They are caught in a trap. They are ensnared, which causes them, you know, the path that they were on, they're diverted. You're running along and you get caught in the snare, ensnared from your faith, drawn away from the truth. There's a lot of humility, but also vulnerability. Humility renders you vulnerable on several fronts, because the proud don't really care. They say, you're humble? Fine. I'm not. I'm going to walk over you now. Verse 7. Woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must needs be that offenses come, but woe to that man by whom the offense cometh. Wherefore, if thy hand or foot offend thee, cut them off and cast them from thee. It is better for thee to enter into life halt or maimed, rather than having 2 hands or 2 feet to be cast into everlasting fire. And if thy eye offend thee, pluck it out and cast it from thee. It is better for thee to enter into life with 1 eye, rather than having 2 eyes to be cast into hellfire. Take heed that ye despise not one of these little ones. For I say unto you that in heaven their angels do always behold the face of my Father which is in heaven. Yeah, it's just going to keep going. Woe unto the world because of offenses, for it must needs to be that offenses come. Things are going to offend. Offenses are going to come. They're going to, and I don't mean like in the question of just like, I don't like what I hear. That's not offense. The word is scandalizo. And I believe the root had something to do with the trigger that causes a trap. But the idea is, the offense is that they have, it causes them to fall away from the faith. That's the type of offense we're talking about. It's not just like, oh, I don't like what I hear. You know, that's... Well, people get offended in things like that, but I don't know what they're offended from or about. It's interesting we have the idea of offense. Like, right? You commit a capital offense. And to be offended, it means to be the object of offense. Like, so it's sort of like it is... You are somehow being caused to deviate from the true. And offenses come, things which cause us to deviate from the true. God only knows, you know, it's... But here's the thing is that, and woe to them who bring it. It's like the devil. He brings offense. He does it as part of the world. It's you know, I think it's a necessary thing. Yet, just like Pharaoh, for this purpose have I raised you up, that I might show my power in you and make my name known. The offenders exist and have a purpose, and it is not good. But it is good in the sense that God brings good out of it. And like it says in the book of Romans, all things work together for good, for those that love God, who are called according to his purpose. So woe to the world because of offenses. Offenses will come, and it causes some to fall away, but others it will strengthen. You know, the things that come against us to turn us from Christ, you know, because the thing is, it says that, remember in the in chapter 13 again, when it talked about the parable of the tares, that the time is going to come when he's going to go and gather out of all his kingdom all things which offend and which do iniquity. They're there. It's part of the world. It's part of, you know, in the beginning it said, the serpent said, you know, when you eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. But God also said that in the day you eat thereof, you die. So, that which opens your eyes to the world also kills you. Because having eyes opened, we suddenly become responsible for all the things we do. Or we can be held responsible. Because we know what we're doing. And oftentimes, we do it willingly. Or I would say it like this. You know, I'm what I am. Whatever I am, it is me. If I don't like what I am, you know, that's a rough thing to swallow, you know. And the truth is, it's like you don't entirely like what I am. You know, I would be different. I would have myself different. But I don't turn to God and say, why have you made me thus? But rather say, you know, how may I be changed? And that's the mindset of a child, is humbly come to God, not why have you made me thus, but rather with a sense of wonder at the world and believing things, having the humility to know, to be like, how can I grow up into this thing? How can I enter into God's kingdom as a child? I want to be a child of his kingdom. I want to enter into it and grow up in it, into a man in his kingdom, into something great. That's how you become great in the kingdom. We should all have that goal in mind. We don't want to be least in the kingdom. We all want to be great in the kingdom. It's not that everyone's going to be the same, some 30, some 60, some 100-fold, but all productive, and it's all great. You know, it's like, well, I don't know, I was going to make an analogy I don't think I need. This is about roller coasters or something like that. It's stupid. And then he makes this, let's see how much time I got. I got 8 minutes to talk about it. Okay. It's going to overlap with the next time. And he gives this thing about if your hand or foot offend you, cut it off. Now, I don't believe this literally at all. You know, I mean, this is not meant to be taken literally. And there's a little bit of hyperbole in it as well. Just like when he said if it was better for him to have a millstone hung about his neck and he was cast in the sea. Like, he's just saying it's really bad to offend one of these little ones that believe in me. It's a bad thing. How bad? Well, it would be better to have a millstone hung about your neck and be thrown into the sea. You know, which is a pretty unpleasant way to die, but actually a pretty, drowning, okay? To drag down to the bottom of the sea, you'd probably be crushed faster than you'd be drowned, maybe. I don't know. Well, he said drown. It's sort of like, it's not just a question of like being drowned, but it's like the millstone just drags you all the way to the bottom. So like being hid in the deepest, darkest place. And your body is like sort of like in an unknown place. It's interesting in the book of Revelation. The sea gave up the dead which are in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged, every man according to his works. It's funny because I opened with Revelation 20. I wasn't even sure which scripture to open with. The last time I thought I'll throw 20 in, and then I just kind of was like, okay, we'll go 20. I'm going to play the last part of 20 at the end, because it rings here. They were drowned in the depths of the sea with a millstone around their neck, but God brings them back up for judgment. And what is in that judgment, and then that after that judgment is the lake of fire. Now, an assertion I make, and I'm saying it's an assertion because I'm not going to go through a lot of trouble right now to prove it, but I do intend, perhaps after we finish Matthew, to do something a little more topical. Either that or I'll go into another book, obviously. Because the book study is like, I don't need to prepare, because I just can look it over, and I've been through these things I think about. But if I want to do a topic, I got to bring out together scriptures from all over the place. And I wanted to take a week and talk about some topical stuff. Specifically hell and the lake of fire. They're two different things, really. Death and hell were cast in the lake of fire. The lake of fire was cast in the lake of fire? Hell was cast into hell. The lake of fire is something different. And there it is in the book of Revelation, clear as day. And the distinction between the two is not as clear as day in English, because unfortunately they translated it differently. Hell fire, everlasting fire. People say, oh, everlasting fire. Then they leap to the immediate conclusion, oh, that's everlasting torment. No, it's more like getting a millstone hung around your neck and being cast into the depths of the sea. Except it's worse. Right? It's better to be drowned than to be cast into a lake of fire. That's for sure. Yeah, I think I'd rather be drowned. You know, would you like to be tossed in a volcano? Probably be faster though, right? But, you know, death is not pleasant in any way, shape, or form that I'm aware of, unless you go... I guess a heroin overdose, that might be a pleasant way to die. There are certainly worse things, like having your face gnawed off by rats over the course of several days. How about that? How about having your face gnawed off by rats eternally? Or having your guts ripped out and then stuffed back in, then ripped back. Yeah, like when people start talking about eternal torments, it gets to be a bit much. Like if the rats are eating your face off every single day, it's just what happens that's just life then. And it is. It's life. It's eternal life. But you understand, Jesus here says, if your eye offends you, or your foot, or whatever is causing you to offend, to be offended, you know, if it's causing offense, meaning making you to go astray, seducing you from the truth. That's what offense is. Causing the little ones to be, abandon your faith, live a hedonistic lifestyle, abandon your faith and do whatever. If something that's a part of you is causing you to offend, he's saying, well, cut it off. It is better for you to enter, and like he said in chapter 5, it is better for one of your members to perish and I said there's a correlation between a cut off hand or a cut off foot, a plucked out eye. He's saying destroy these things to avoid destruction. Because everlasting fire is very simple. It's like in, Isaiah chapter 66, the worm shall not die, the fire shall not be quenched. It's quoted in other places too. The unquenchable fire, that's not how you torture people. Like, I can't have rats eat you to the bone. That's not eternal torment. That's death. Right? They devour you till you're dead, until you're all eaten up. And if I let them keep coming, if I don't heal you, restore you, if there isn't some counterbalancing force, you know what I mean? Like whatever suffering you would be suffering in hell for it to be a torment, there would have for it to be truly a literal eternal torment, there would have to be some force from God preventing you from expiring, keeping you alive in spite of the injuries, in spite of the damage. Because pain is from damage. To torment requires damage. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? And if you keep damaging something, it breaks or dies or whatever. If it doesn't, then it gets stronger. It's like, that's how it works. So eternal torment can't be literal. What is literal is the cut off hand. Not that you should take it literal, but like the symbology of that, of a hand that's been cut off. What's it like? It's insensate. Doesn't feel. You pluck out your eye. That eye stops seeing because it's disconnected from the body. It's disconnected from the life. It dies. It perishes. Eternal, everlasting fire, it just burns you up. The fire lasts forever. You don't. And if your eye offend thee, pluck it out, same thing. Cast into hell fire. And hell fire is Gehenna of fire. It's Gehenna fire. Gehenna, Ge, is the prefix that means valley in Hebrew. Though this is Greek, obviously, but it comes from the valley of the son of Hinnom, Gehinnom. It's referenced in the Old Testament several places. We're not going to go there now, but when I talk about hell, I'll bring out the references. But it also had another older name. I think it's an older name. Tophet. It's mentioned in the book of Isaiah. Tophet is ordained of old. For the king it is prepared. He hath made it deep and large. The pile thereof is fire and much wood. The breath of the Lord of hosts, like a stream of brimstone, doth kindle it. Tophet is ordained of old. It is not, people think it isn't talked about in the Old Testament. No, Tophet is talked about in the Old Testament. It's just distinctive from Sheol, which is the grave, the place of death, what we think of as the hell when you die. But there's no final judgment. How can you go to hell without final judgment? Well, we all go to hell. As it says of Jesus, his soul was not left in hell. But we do not all go to the lake of fire. Not if we're willing to cut off our members which offend and cast them from us and let those things die, that which remains might be stronger and live. It's interesting to hear he talks about sort of what is torment but to pluck out your eye, to cut off your hand, to enter into life with one eye, than having two eyes to be cast into hellfire, to lose both, to lose everything. What shall a man gain if he loses his soul? Or what will a man give in exchange for his soul? That is better, to have both to be cast into hellfire. And also what he said in, chapter, was it 10:28? Double check. 10:28. Be right. Yeah, fear not them. Fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul. But rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. And they'll say, well, kill and destroy. He says destroy because it's not just kill. He's using synonymous language. He does it all the time. Destroy is a synonym for kill. And if I pluck out my eye, would you call that destroyed? Yeah, I think so. And if let's say my hand, if I cut off my hand and burn it in a fire, and don't let the fire go out ever, the hand will be dust, right? But what they would suggest is that if every day you hit my hand with a hammer, but leave it intact, you know what I mean? But just kind of mess with it, harm it, so it becomes this quivering yet still living mass of flesh on the end of my hand, is this stump of horrible pain and etc. Right? Swallow it. Not that's destruction. No, that is an understatement. It's not destroyed. It's still there. That's hyperbole. I mean, it's not really destroyed. You can't use destruction as a metaphor for eternal torment, or you can, but it's a real. It's not. You're not being. It's it's such a stretch. In the book of Revelation, in chapter 20, it talks about death and hell being cast in the lake of fire. This is the second death, and I submit to you, that death is real. It's as real as what happens to your hand when you cut it off. That's what happens to the soul when it's cast in the lake of fire. It is a second death. The hand dies when you cut it off. It is destroyed when you cut it off. If my hand is wounded, it's not destroyed. Oh, I'm destroyed. You know what I'm saying? No, you're being far too, that's a bit of a hyperbole. And when it talks about eternal torment, and it does on just a few occasions in the book of Revelation, it says the devil was cast in the lake of fire and shall be tormented forever and ever. The idea of eternal torment is metaphorical of something else, because we don't even know what eternal torment would look like. Like I said, if you try to imagine it, it doesn't work as a form of punishment. It can, but Jesus said it would be more tolerable for some than for others in the day of judgment. That would imply that on some level all the punishment can be tolerated. And therefore, like I said, it's either going to eventually kill you or make you stronger, or break you in some way where your mind, you retreat. You know, that's how creatures work. It's a bit of a... It is a strange doctrine. Strange indeed. And I'm out of time for today, but we'll be picking up at verse 10. Like I said, that was the subject I wanted to cover. I wanted to spend time, like a week, just going over all the scriptures I can dig out that clarify and help us understand what this thing called hell is. And distinctive. There's no word hell. There's no Hades here in Matthew. It is Gehenna of fire, the valley of the son of Hinnom, which answers to the lake of fire in the book of Revelation. It is the lake of fire. It is the second death. You can enter into life, casting aside the parts of you that cause offense, or you can hang on to the offending members and have the whole thing tossed away like garbage. Because that's what Gehenna was. It was a place... The reason Jesus referenced it, because you could look at Jerusalem, it was a place where they burned garbage and they threw animal carcasses. It was the city dump, essentially. You end up in the city dump. It isn't the dungeon of the tormentors. I mean, he mentions that. He delivered him into the tormentors, till he should pay all that he owes. Till he should pay every dime. And people will say, well, that... If you sin against the infinite God, your offense is infinite. I don't buy that. Yeah, like, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work to me. I've had this debate before. In fact, if you look at my website, if you're interested in this subject, before I get into that, oraclesofgod.org, right? I have on my website it's like a debate I engaged in email with a pastor, and I recorded it into audio. And I believe, I just want to double check here. Oh, great. Hold on, let's see. All right, where is... So I don't even have a link to my own website in my browser. It's always there when I open a new browser window, though, so just do that. Oh, except I already have a browser. See, I don't want to open up the other window because it's streaming, but we'll do it. No, don't. All right, whatever. Let's see. On the doctrine page, can you find it? Let's see. The studies page. Let's see. Sure. If you go all the way to the bottom on the studies page, you'll see on the left-hand column, you'll see a series of studies. You know, they're numbered, 37, 36, and it goes down, down, down to the oldest stuff. But near the bottom, under number 1, it's unnumbered. It's a discussion on the subject of hell. It's a 6.5-hour discussion, and most of that is me, but it is also a pastor I had a discussion with about the doctrine of hell, and sort of a debate. So, if you're interested in that subject, I suggest you listen to that. I go into a great amount of detail on that, explaining things, and I still have yet more to say. And we'll get to that. Okay, anyways, thanks for joining me today. Look forward to staying with you again tomorrow. And let's close out with a little more from Revelation 20. Which one? The dead? Or they were judged. Let's go with the dead.